Bonjour tout le monde. It's me, Hesketh, talking a little bit of French. That's because Terence is too famous to join us on the pod these days. But we wanted to talk about our new manager, Patrick Vieira. Not quite as good with segues as Terence is, but we'll let it run. I'm here with Patrick O'Connor. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, how are you, Sam?
Very good. Do you speak any French?
I actually took it for 4 years in England and don't speak a word.
Perfect. That's
Scary,
good.
isn't it? Yeah.
And we're also joined by Nick, who may also speak French.
Bonjour, ça va?
Ça va très bien.
Oui.
There you go. I think that's going to be the end of the French talking.
Mad.
Merde. We're going to be saying that a lot this season, I reckon. How are you, Nick?
Yeah, I'm good. It's England doing well. We've got a manager, and we haven't got pesky Terence or Chris or Mike, so we can misbehave, can't we?
We can. I wonder if producer Sam, who's lurking in the background, is going to be trigger happy with the bleep button or the mute button. I suppose we'll have to wait and see. But for now, let's get into a bit of chat about what's happened outside of the managerial appointment. Starting with something I've already mentioned, Terence being too famous to join us these days. So in case people didn't see, Terence and his lovely German wife Linda went to the England-Germany game together with a sign that said this could end in divorce. And Terence and Linda were promptly splattered across every website, Lad Bible, German newspaper that you can think of. And now he's just not replying to us, is he, guys?
I think he missed a trick because he should have done it in German on the reverse side, so he could have kind of got both sets of media properly.
Good point.
Das Lad Bible. But yeah, we've tried to get in touch with him. He's now got an out of office, which sends us to his agent. So he's yet to comment on Patrick Vieira joining us, but hopefully we'll hash out a deal for the coming season.
It was nice to see some of the abuse he got on Twitter. The weirdest one was, who's that Irish Harry Potter twat? I have no idea what that was all about.
Was it you that put that?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't me that went on that he looks like he likes a good pegging either. But there you go. So, you're famous, you got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you?
Well, literally in that case, by the sounds of it. There's no segue from Terence pegging or being pegged to Wayne Hennessy going to Chelsea, but we'll move on. One of the weirder stories, as we talk about what's happening with Palace, is that Wayne Hennessy seems to be a target for Chelsea. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Seriously, no chance. If you're Chelsea and you can get a third string, I'm assuming third string keeper.
You would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, you could do better than Wayne Hennessy. Listen, we all know my history with Wayne Hennessy as a goalkeeper at Palace, and I'm not close to being the biggest fan. But I just don't see that being a realistic story. I guarantee they can go with a younger, better goalie than him. Listen, I wish him all the best. Now he's no longer a Palace player, but I can't see him going to Chelsea. I don't see that happening, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, you sort of feel like even though he's not a great goalie, and you and I probably have the same opinion of him, Patrick, but you think he could still be a first choice in the Championship somewhere, wouldn't you? Rather than sort of rest his days up on the bench, or not even on the bench at Chelsea.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Euros. He didn't play in the Euros at all because they've got a better first string keeper who also Ward, who's a backup at Leicester. So if he wants to get his Wales even career back on track, I mean, I know he's probably aging as far as playing internationally, but you think you go to a Championship side, a mid-table Championship side where he can play every day, and and by doing that, we'll get back into the Wales side as a number one keeper. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But again, I'm not big on transfer rumors. I think I laugh at a lot of them because they're really, really funny. But that one came from left field for me. It really was very strange.
Yeah, it really did. But talking of Wales, I think there's a segue that does work. I'm going to stop talking about my segues now. But moving on to the Euros, I'm going to have to let these guys talk because people who listen to the preview pod know I'm not a big follower of international football. I watch it. I don't really have an opinion on it. And now all the Palace players are out of the Euros. I'm sort of done. But Nick, you've been enjoying the tournament so far, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been good. It's great to see England do well again, and it's great to see them do well with a Palace protege. Doing it is an articulate manager who's got the majority of the country behind him, and it's good to see that Marxism and taking the knee is leading us forward. Of course, Ukraine weren't very good, to be honest, compared to other teams we've played. But I genuinely think we've got a chance this time. So it's exciting stuff. I only watch England when they're in the tournaments. I don't take any notice of friendlies. I don't take any notice even of the qualification matches. So I barely recognise who's in the team because football-wise, I just really follow Palace and occasionally Bromley. But yeah, I'm enjoying the ride, really am. And there's been some cracking games in the whole competition. Do you feel nationally homeless? Is that why you don't really follow it anymore?
Yeah. Listen, to be honest, my thing is I don't really feel like I can cheer for people who play for teams I don't like not even teams that I don't care about, but like I can't. I think we had this discussion on the preview pod where Lingard had a good little run for England, and I was like, he scored the winner against us in the cup final, so I hate him forever. And it's like I don't want to support Man United players. I get it. I understand why people do it, and why everyone in England anyway. And I'm sure when we get onto Patrick, I'm sure expats will feel the same, that it looks like a really positive tournament for England, but it's just not for me.
So
What do you reckon, Patrick?
sorry, it's nothing to do with having French parentage, and you're just waiting for Guernsey to qualify, so you can kind of have a bit of both.
You've got to pick something in the middle. If the Channel Islands had a team in the Euros, I'd be all over it.
Yeah, for me, see, again, I'm the oldest person on the pod. I was born in '65, so I was alive when England last won the World Cup, which is hard to actually say because it's kind of weird. I was a year and a half, but internationally, I've always been a big follower of England. When I was there, obviously, and when I moved to America, I still really followed it. I've been disappointed so many times, let down. 1990 particularly stuck with me, losing the World Cup semi-final match on penalties to you know who. And then 96, I thought we were going to win it in 96. I really did. I had such a good feeling about that team. The whole is coming home was started back then, which is really that stupid song, which I sing all the time now, even I don't really believe it's coming home. And now I've got to give credit to Southgate. I'm not a big fan of his from a club management standpoint, but internationally, he's a great motivator of men. I do like what he's done with the players as far as, getting them rally around, getting the country to feel good about, the football. His tactics, I'm not a huge fan of, but you know what? They've got a clean sheet. What is it? Six clean sheets now. I really love players like Saka and Sterling. I'm not a Harry Kane fan. I won't say I am. I would be lying about that. Love Grealish. But like Sam just said, Hector just said, I have a real problem cheering for players that on a Saturday will just destroy Palace. So I don't necessarily cheer for them. I just kind of cheer for England. But that has become a thing as I've gotten older. Like cheering for players that I really like. I don't like Harry Kane. I don't like Harry Maguire. I don't like Luke Shaw. I mean, for obvious reasons. So from that standpoint, it's difficult. But I really have gotten into this tournament, and I really hope Wednesday, when it comes and we play Denmark, that we can not only beat Denmark, but actually just go on and finish it and win it. I just want to see England. It's like Palace, you just want to see Palace win something in your lifetime. It's the same with England. I want to see England win one thing. I'd be very happy to just win, even if it's a Euro, but Palace winning a League Cup. Give me that, and I swear I won't care what England done the rest of my life. And we'll see what happens from there. So let's, hopefully they do well on Wednesday.
Well, fingers crossed for you guys.
Thanks.
I support your support. How about that? Moving back to the domestic game, then there's been very little sort of new stuff coming out from Palace, but we did finally see one of the kits, which was the away kit, the all yellow away kit with a sort of red and blue stripe up the side. Nick, first thoughts on the new away kit?
Barca '84, isn't it?
It is.
That was the first thing I thought. It's just a shame it hasn't got the bells down the sleeves. It's all right, isn't it? I might buy it when it goes down to 20 quid at the end of the season. I've got a bit of an issue with where the stripe ends on the shoulder. I don't think it goes up high enough, but the embossed eagle on it is a nice touch, isn't it? I just don't like the being sponsored by a betting company. I don't care what the kit is. I just don't like having things that lead to gambling addiction plastered over our shirt. I just think it's wrong.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it seems to be the norm for half the league now, doesn't it? That it's a
Yeah.
betting company of some sort, which is kind of a shame. If only we were short enough to be able to buy the youth team kit, which has been sponsored by EA Sports for the last couple of years, isn't it?
Right.
That'd be a better one. What do you make of it, Patrick? The away kit?
Yeah, it's all right. Being so far away, Sam, I want to support the club whenever I can and however I can. So I always end up buying the kits anyway. I don't care what they look like. I've never gotten too worried about, good, bad, or indifferent. I've liked certain kits. I've always been a fan of like the evil sash, that kind of stuff. But honestly,
Mm-hmm.
when the kits come out, it doesn't bother me whether they're good, bad. I'll end up buying it at some point and putting up on my wall downstairs and wearing it on match days, as if I'm at Sellers. But honestly, that doesn't bother me that much. The away kit, honestly, the yellow, I like it, but like I said, I don't really get caught up in, oh, when's the away kit coming out? Oh gosh, we haven't given out the home kit first. When are we gonna have the third kit? Was it gonna be black this year? Why? It just doesn't bother me. I'm not bothered. The kit's a kit, and whatever it is, I'll support Palace either way. So
Obviously, any kit we're wearing that we're winning in is a good kit, isn't it?
exactly. Thank you. Nail on head right there.
The thing with kits is they kind of grow on you. I didn't like the white away kit at the start of the season, of last season, but I love it now. I think it's great, and it's not until you actually see them on the players and get used to seeing them that they kind of grow on you a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with
Even the
that.
one we had the first season we came up with, which was kind of like a Crystal Palace version of a Blackburn Rovers kit, that
Right.
really grew on me.
Yep.
That was a departure from red and blue stripes.
Exactly. Good
Just
point.
seeing it, you
Yep.
get used to it.
Well, hopefully we will be loving these kits by the end of the season.
Exactly.
After Patrick has romped us through the league and taken us into Europe.
Let's go.
But on that, let's move on to sort of the main discussion that obviously has been taken over all summer, which was the managerial appointment or lack thereof. And I wanted to start really with talking about some of the names that were linked to us and how we felt about them. So, the likes of Sean Dyche again, Lampard, Steve Cooper, and Valerian Ismail, before we were then seriously linked with Nuno and Favre. How did you guys, I'll start with you, Nick, how did you feel about the sort of, before Nuno and Favre, the list of names that we were linked with? Did you like them? Were you worried about any of them at all?
To be honest, I don't really know him that well. The Cooper one is not the best looking bloke. So to have that sort of walking up and down the touchline or in the technical area might be a bit off putting with like Nosferatu there. I know we've had a lot of Nosferatu gifts going on. But you tend to look at the negative stuff that other fans, like the Swansea fans, didn't seem to like him very much. And all I saw of Swansea last year was the playoff final, and they were dirty. I didn't like them at all. And I thought, well, I don't want us to be a dirty team. I was excited by Nuno coming, but that was a farce. It felt like we were being used in a little bit of the way. And fair play to Steve Parish for actually putting his foot down with a firm hand, because I think the demands were too big. Sean Dyche, not really sure about. He'd kind of be a younger Roy, I think, in sort of keeping us up, but not in an exciting way. Frank Lampard, I've never really liked him, and I can't put my finger on why it is. So I'm kind of glad it wasn't him. The only one out of that list was Ishmael, simply because he seemed to be playing an exciting brand of football with Barnsley, who were playing well above what they should have done. And that's kind of what we needed, was somebody who could bring out more of our players, and they're actually sort of make the sum of their parts better than the individuals, if that makes sense.
And I think it would certainly help if we had got Ishmael and done all right to sort of exercise the ghost of Carl Leaburn, which is what people of a certain vintage,
Yeah.
which unfortunately also includes me, is our overriding memory of him, is him getting absolutely turned over by a perennial cart horse and Carl Leaburn. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of different styles of manager as well, wasn't it? Which was interesting. What did you think, Patrick? Did you have any favourites at the time?
Well, everyone that listens knows that it was anybody but Hudson at one point, which was not very, you know, not very unique. But that was how far I'd gotten. But as far as the choices, honestly, I had no problem with Cooper, because I know that myself and our famous young Turkish friend didn't like him because of the way he looks. But Steve Cooper did win the World Cup. I mean, I know it was under 17 World Cup, but he did win the World Cup. I know he had some really good players in, Sancho, who's playing for England now, and Foden and stuff like that. But I thought he did a good job with that team. And, younger players, I was excited about that. And that didn't happen. Never wanted Dyche particularly. Again, it was only anybody with Hodgson type thing. But Dyche, to me, exactly as was said before, it reminded me a lot of Hodgson. And he would have kept us up, but I don't know if I would have really loved his football after a couple of years of that. Absolutely did not want Lampard. One reason is I didn't think he did a great job at Derby County. He did play younger players, which was good for him, would have been good for us. I didn't think he did a good job at Chelsea, as shown by the fact that as soon as he left, they went up the table and they won the Champions League. And I have a personal issue. My brother actually went on trial at West Ham under Frank Lampard Sr., and my father had an issue with Frank Lampard Sr. on the personal level, so I never root for the Lampards. Nuno, I was very excited about when I first heard it, and then he went to Tottenham, so forget that clown. Ishmael, like you guys, I would have liked him. I liked his style of football at Barnsley. He had that Palace connection. I thought, he could maybe build something here. But the fact that we didn't hire him, there's probably something to it. So I didn't have a problem why we didn't go there. Now, Favre was the one that I really wanted after, again, getting caught up in, he's going to come, he's going to play young players, his style at Dortmund, blah, blah, blah. Like most people, I started watching the documentary on Amazon about Dortmund, which was actually brilliant. I'm not even joking, guys. I got through like the second episode and it fell, and I stopped watching it. But what I watched of it, I was very impressed with his style of football, the way he motivated players. That he had players like Sancho again. That name again came up. He had the American kid Christian Pulisic there. I mean, good style. I would have actually been very excited about Favre. I thought that would have been a really good signing. So as a manager, but again, we ended up with a player. I mean, a manager now, which we'll get to in a bit, who I really like, and I think everybody got really wound up about the timing and. It's going to be preseason soon. We haven't signed anybody. We've got 18 players out of contract or whatever it is, 10 out of contract, blah, blah, blah. But I think things happen for a reason. I think that, where we are now, I think we're in a good place. I really think it's going to be a good thing for us.
I have to say, I started watching that Dortmund documentary as well when the Far stuff came up. We watched the first, they're quite long episodes as well.
They're very long. Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half or something.
Yep.
And I was like literally texting my mate who's a Palace fan, like verbatim. They've called him the brain. They said he's like the best tactical coach ever. They said, even players like who are already established, he gets them playing that extra. He finds one thing they can improve on. I was like, mate, this is going to be the best appointment ever.
Absolutely.
I can't believe we're talking to him. I can't believe we're going to get him. Anyway, went to bed, woke up the next day. No, we're not.
Exactly.
No, we're not.
Yeah, me too. Yep. End of the documentary watching. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. It's no when Eagles there, is it anyway? So
exactly. Yeah, subtitles and all that stuff. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it was an eventful, especially with Nuno and Favre sort of going the same way. And I agree with Nick. I think Nuno did play us. Favre maybe less so, but
yeah,
the same sort of result, wasn't it? But we've ended up finally with a manager who wants to join and did sign. Although I must admit, when the news came out and then it wasn't officially announced for a couple of days, I was just waiting for the the Athletic to bring out a new report saying he's off.
Yeah.
He's gone to Lille. But it has been announced, and we are now officially Patrick Vieira's Red and Blue Army.
Do you think Parish deserves some of the criticism he got for the kind of, I wouldn't call it a fiasco because, we've got a manager and the manager came in before the players came back to start training. So it's not like if we'd have announced it 2 weeks ago, he'd still start training today, wouldn't he? And it's down to Dougie to get the transfers in, as far as I understand. So that wouldn't have made any difference either. So the fact that we've got somebody in for the first day of training, I don't know. Is Parish still a bit green, or is he, has been in charge for 10 years now, or do you think he's still learning as he goes? What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I'll jump in here for a little bit. I think, see, I've been a big fan of Parrish, but more critical this season with the Hodgson situation. But I know he had a lot of time, but it was not like he didn't try to appoint a manager until July 1st. The Favre thing, and even even with the other managers, Nuno, for instance, he went as far as he can go. He thought he had a manager. It's very difficult. And then if you look at other teams that similarly, like look how long it took Tottenham to get a manager, Everton to get a manager. We're still suffering through the pandemic. I think situation was such that there was so much other things, factors going on. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to pinpoint this one manager and I'm going to go and get him and sign him and blah, blah, blah. There was so many factors going on. Again, Nuno played us, as Sam just said, played us big time. I think Favre generally just got cold feet. I really believe that he would have come, but just felt like, what, I don't know the language. I'm not sure about maybe the transfer issue and the money issue. And then there's the whole quarantine issue. He, new country. He probably didn't want to deal with all that. And then the fact, again, Vieira, apparently we had all interviewed, apparently, I think what they said in April or May. So, or what he's talked to him, I mean. So, I mean, it was in there. So I don't think he deserves, a tremendous amount of, criticism, because again, I think we could have gotten a manager earlier, just that circumstances were kind of like messed up. So as much as I want to criticize him, I think in this case, I think he really doesn't deserve to get killed. But again, as Palace fans, we tend to pile on because that's who we are, so.
I think as well, I mean, I think he did the right thing in sort of telling Nuno, we're pulling out at this stage, because going by what was written in the Athletic, it sounds like Nuno is playing some really funny games and
exactly
demanding more stuff. So at some point you have to say, look, enough's enough. We've got to move on. I think with Favre, if Favre becomes available and wants to talk to you, you got to talk to him. I mean, I still can't believe that we even got to that point, because he is such a good manager. I mean, everywhere he's been good. So, I mean, yes, I would like to have had a manager in sooner, just because I worry about everything.
Me too. Yeah.
Until a manager gets appointed, you're always going to worry that a manager hasn't been appointed yet. But what you would hope is that, because we're working with this sporting director, whatever Dougie's title is, you'd think, look, we're at least down the road with some targets. And then you can say to Vieira, do you want this? Do you want that? Is there anyone that you want us to get talking to? Rather than starting completely cold.
Right.
But that's me talking in hope rather than in any knowledge. I've got no insider knowledge of how these things work. But, thankfully he's in. And just before we started recording, we saw pictures from the training ground of Vieira actually at training. So he is here. It's not a lie. It's not a mirage. And there were some pictures of Wilf, which is obviously good to see. James MacArthur was back in training, which is obviously great as well. And Mike Scott will be absolutely delighted to hear that there was also a picture of Yaroslav Yak in training. So our centre-back woes are completely out of the window, because he's going to lead the charge from the back, I think. But let's move on with Vieira, now that he has been appointed. One of the sort of sticks to beat him with, especially from teams, fans of other teams, but some Palace fans as well, is that he doesn't have experience in the Premier League, which is something that Parish, I think, mentioned that he wanted initially. But looking at his record, he's had 2 years in the MLS. He's had 2 and a bit years at Nice in League One, which isn't a pub league by any means. And he had some good time at the elite development centre, whatever the sort of youth academy is called at Man City. And I was just looking at other managers in the league. And if you look at the new Wolves manager from Portugal, 5 years ago, he was an assistant at Sheffield Wednesday. 4 years ago, he was an assistant at Swansea. And he's had one season at Benfica.
Right.
But he's come into Wolves, and no one's talking about he's got no experience, and he's had maybe one season as a manager. So, Nick, I'll come to you. Do you think that Vieira does have a lack of experience? Do you think if he does, it matters? Or do you think it doesn't really make a difference?
Being one of the best players of his generation and actually playing in the Premier League, you can't say he's got no Premier League experience. He's played under brilliant managers as well. I mean, he must pick up stuff. The fact that we're not his first major managerial position must hold him in good stead, because you'd like to think that any mistakes he's made along the way, that he's learned from them. And I think a lot is going to ride on who he brings in as his backroom team. As the Frank de Boer, we got all excited about, didn't we? Because he was this brilliant Dutch player, but he was a bit of a maverick who was very, very self-centered, wasn't he? It was all about him. I don't think Vieira is going to be that type of manager. And from watching him being a pundit, he seems very thoughtful and very knowledgeable. So I think that should hold him in good stead. I don't think he's got the ego that Frank de Boer had. So, yeah, I think it'll be good. You talked about the training ground photos earlier. I've actually started getting really excited now I've seen them. It was all a bit meh at first because of how long it took, but I'm actually starting to get excited about it now.
And you'd sort of think that players like Wilf, who we all know, because Arsenal fans beat us around the head of it, that Wilf grew up an Arsenal fan. You got to think that him now having Vieira as his manager is, an exciting appointment. It might not persuade him that he never wants to leave us for the rest of his life, but players of that sort of age who grew up watching him when he was playing for the Invincibles and then went on to dominate as well in Italy. That's got to be good for players like him as well, you would think.
Indeed. And I like the fact that we've got a black manager as well, which kind of represents our local area. That's going to be something that attracts players to us as well, I think. Coming from multicultural Croydon as we do, I think that can only be positive for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It's probably a discussion that will take a lot longer if we go into it in depth, but it is certainly great for better representation and for it to be with our club is a bonus. And what I want to do is talk about his sort of a bit earlier in his career when he was in America, where he sort of cut his teeth as a first team coach, and unsurprisingly move over to Patrick on this one. Obviously live in New York and have seen his work with New York FC firsthand. So give us a bit of background on what you think of him.
Yeah, so the way the MLS works is now it's a franchise system. So the club he went to, NYCFC, actually begun in 2015. They were affiliated with Man City. So Vieira, as you had mentioned before, Sam, Vieira had worked with the under-23s at Man City, was hired by NYCFC to become their manager after the manager had the first season. Jason Christ, who actually was a very good manager, was fired because they had a really poor first season under him. Notoriously, new franchises to the MLS, tend to take a couple of years to become good. So the fact they didn't give Christ any time is interesting. So Vieira's first year was 2016. They ended up making the playoffs that first year. They were second actually in the what they called Eastern, the two conferences, Eastern and Western Conference. They were second in the conference, which was a very good, good job for him in the first year. His first signing was actually Jack Harrison, who plays for Leeds now. Harrison came over here to play college. I was going to say football. Yeah, I'll say football. And has developed really well, and I actually saw Harrison play quite a bit. Again, I'm not a huge a fan of MLS. I follow it, I watch it a lot. I actually went to some NYCFC games because they play in the Bronx. They play Yankee Stadium actually, so it's actually easier for me to get to their games than the Red Bulls games. So I kind of followed them a bit. I like the fact they had Vieira as the manager. I knew him obviously when he was at Arsenal, etc. And he did a good job. I mean, he plays a 4-3-3. The team improved every year he was with them. And actually, when he left, they were quite upset because he kind of pledged to play. I think he signed like maybe a 4-year contract. He left after like two seasons and a bit and went to Nice. And they were actually quite upset that he left. And the team kind of went down a little bit after he left, and then kind of bounced back. But just overall, I think his style of play here was attractive football. He's got this hard man, central defensive mentality, but he plays some decent, interesting football. I kind of like the way NYCFC played. They've always played like an attractive style. They kind of model again themselves after Man City, the way Man City plays. Under Pep, possession type football. Not a lot of shots, but they're very good with the quality of their shots as far as what's that XG rubbish that people talk about, in scoring goals. So, he did really well over here. And I thought he did a decent job at Nice. I mean, Nice, I think they ended up in Europa League. But again, what happens with managers like that, if you don't do well, and you have a 4 or 5 game losing streak, you end up getting the bin, and he got binned in at Nice. But I think I'm excited by the signing of Vieira. Again, I having seen him over here a bit, quite a bit, and again, he just brings something a little different. As you guys said, he doesn't have Premier League manager experience, but I know that he was interviewed by Newcastle at one point, and I just think that the fact he's a tremendous leader. I mean, he's part of the Invincibles. I mean, he was a tremendous leader. Everyone knows who Patrick Vieira is as a player. Different to him and De Boer. De Boer never played in the Premier League, and I think he has a much bigger ego than Vieira has. I mean, and I think that really is what really has continued to hurt De Boer throughout his career. But I think Vieira's going to do well with Palace. I really hope that he plays. I mean, he played younger players at Nice. I think the average age over there was like 23.7 years, and we've got a good academy in the 23s and the 18s. And if he brings through some of the academy players and integrates them into our team, with some new signings, I think we'll be okay. And I'm much excited by the fact that it's a different type of a hire. I remember when we hired Steve Coppell, and I'm sure Nick will remember it way back when. It was a risky hire back then by Ron Nodes, but it ended up working out really well for Palace. I mean, arguably our best manager we've ever had in our history. And I'm not saying Vieira's going to be Stevie Coppell, anything, but I'm just saying I just like the fact that he's got the experience of playing in the league, being a leader. He's young. He's got to be excited about the project because again, Palace is going to be a project with so many players out of contract. But I'm excited by it. I really am. I just think that if we give him some time and don't get crazy, I think he'll do some really good things for us.
Yeah, I think I've read some opinions of him, more so at Nice, but a few at New York City as well, and they all seem to be quite positive. I mean, if you look at his time at Nice, obviously I didn't follow it super closely. I have a team that I follow in France, and it isn't Nice. I'm afraid to say it's Bordeaux, who've just been relegated for financial irregularities. So that's
ouch.
good.
Sorry.
But his time at Nice, he finished 7th and 5th. And, he followed Lucien Favre, actually, when he was
Yeah, ironically, right?
I mean, that's a pretty tough guy to follow up, isn't it? So to finish 7th and 5th is really good. I think a lot of people have been a bit critical of the French league. And obviously, although PSG win most of the trophies there, although they didn't this year, I don't think it's a poor league by any stretch. And to finish 7th and 5th in any top division is not bad at all, is it, really? So he was let go about halfway through the 3rd season, I think, after 5 defeats in a row. Apparently, only 2 of those 5 defeats were league games, though. So he lost 3 Europa League games in that time. And to be fair, if Palace were in the Europa League and we lost 3 games, I wouldn't care because it meant that we were in Europe.
Exactly.
But I was reading a little bit about his sort of tactics when he was a Nice manager and the sort of pros and cons. The sort of negative side is that he changed quite a bit. Like he never sort of decided on a tactic. And there were times when it looked like his players sort of didn't know whether they should be playing one way or another. But when we've come from, I suppose, a manager who was quite rigid in his tactics, like Roy, maybe it's a positive. Maybe it is a plan B. Maybe it is a chance to see these players do something different. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, what's pleased me, I'm just going to read out what he said in all the press releases. It's a project that's really appealing to me, having spoken a lot with the chairman and sporting director about their ambition and plans for the whole club, including the academy. The club has fantastic foundations in place after many years in the Premier League, and I hope we can make further improvements to continue to drive the club forward. I like the way he's used "where we" there instead of "I." The academy, the reserve teams, under 23s, under 18s, did exceptionally well. I know he's blooded in young players at Nice, and he's worked with young players at Man City when he was in the academy. Now, I don't know what our finances are like. There's talk. I've seen 50 million transfer budget mentioned. I've seen 80 million mentioned. But if he can bring some of those players through, and we can get young, exciting players in again, like in the old team of the 80s days, from having one of the oldest teams in the league to possibly having one of the youngest and possibly most exciting teams in the league, because he likes to play out from the back, which is a bit risky. He likes to have more possession, which as Palace fans will take some getting used to for us, because normally we've sat back and gone on a break. I think we've got good times ahead of us, and it's good to see that with that Category A academy that players are going to go there because they know there's a manager there now that would blood them into the Premier League. But then again, it might just go tits up. Who knows?
it might. Talking of the academy, I asked Twitter earlier today for any questions, and one that has come up from a few people, notably someone whose name has a swear word in it. So, Sam, get ready to beep it out. Their name is For Fuck's Sake.
It's with a PH, though, to be honest.
For Fuck's Sake.
Fuck's Sake, yeah.
There we go. Yeah. They asked, who realistically do we think can step up from the academy? So if we're saying that Vieira is going to blood these young players, who do we think will come up, and do we want them to come up, or do we want them, to go on loan first? Maybe Patrick, what do you reckon?
I think Scott Banks can definitely contribute this year. We had him out on loan last year. He did okay up in Scotland. Don't see why he can't. I don't know what's going on with Brandon Pierrick. That one worries me. He went out to Scotland also, didn't play much. I think went to Motherwell. Was it Motherwell? Maybe Dunfermline, one of those two, and didn't play a lot. I would say him because I think when I did see him a couple of years ago, he did okay in that one. The one was it Norwich? Yeah, Norwich game.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah. So of the newer ones, I think Jake O'Brien as centre half, the one who plays the 23th. I think why not put him in? He's as good or better than. Sorry, Mike, better than Yaroslav Yak from what I saw last year. So I don't see why I couldn't give him a chance. Rak Saki for sure. I think I'd give him a chance. He's a little young, but there's absolutely no reason why. I remember Wolf when Wolf came through. Reminds me so much of Wolf, it's not even funny. And with Eze being out, I'm not saying you put him, you give him Eze's minutes. I'm just saying there's no reason why you can't get him a couple of, Premier League matches every once in a while and the League Cup. And the other one I would say would be Reece Hannon, the left back. Yeah. We've lost our star left back who plays for Holland. He's off. We need a backup to Mitchell. To me, you've got to play Reece Hannon this year. You've got to have measure backup left back. One, you save money, and two, if you watch him play at all 2023, he's got a great left foot cross. He's not a young kid. I think he's 22. He's not a baby. He definitely deserves the chance. So of the players that Amalabu's not ready yet. I'd love to see him. He's not ready yet. But I would say at least 4 or 5 of those guys. Now you're looking at maybe signing 6 players now, guys, instead of having instead of 10, and just by using our academy right there. So that's what I would do anyway.
Well, that actually leads nicely into another question we had from Mr. Cadbury's Parrot, who asks, how many players do we want to buy, and how many of the out of contract players do we want to keep? Nick, what do you reckon for the latter? Which of the out of contract players do you reckon we should sign back up?
Well, the first one on my list would be Townsend. I'd love it if Sacco was fit again and we could keep him, but that's out the window. Who can fit in with a system of playing out the back without giving the ball away too much? I mean, what players have we got there that
so what you're saying
possession?
is an entirely new back four.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, ironically, Sacco's was the best at that.
Yeah,
We've
no
gone
doubt.
over his mistakes, which actually were he made less mistakes than any other player. He just got that reputation, hadn't he?
Yep.
So yeah, I disagree with Patrick about Omilabu though. I think if he can do it under 18, under 23, he's going to scare defences. I
No,
think
Nick, don't get me
get him
wrong.
in.
I'd love to see it, but he's 18, or he might, yeah, he just turned 18. And listen, I would absolutely love to see it. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see Palace ever risking a chance on. He's got to go out on loan for a figure before you do that. But again, trust me, I would love to see Omalabu. Just love it. So yeah, yeah.
We've got a couple of questions which sort of lead on from that as well, which link nicely into each other. So Palace Ash, who had asked, one of his questions was about playing out from the back, or whether we need new additions, or whether our current squad could do it. But he has also asked, how long do we think we can keep hold of Patrick Vieira? He says if it's gone badly, he's gone by Christmas. If it goes well, he's headhunted. So what do you reckon to that, Patrick?
I mean, that's just so Palace, isn't it? I mean, if he does again, if he does really poorly, see you around Christmas. If he does really well, also come in for him because they fire Arteta. I can't worry about that. Be honest with you, Sam. I can't. If he stays 2 years, wins the League Cup for us, you can go with my blessing. I'm not even joking. He can go and
Yeah.
maybe we'll get another. You know what I mean? I just can't. I really cannot. If I'm worried about how long we can keep him for, then I'm. I think he'll. I don't. I think we'll keep him. I don't think Parish will jump like he jumped with De Boer, because I think he really sees someone here that he can actually work with for a few years. Even if we get off a really really poor start, I think the ball was out of his depth from the beginning. You saw it from that tour when he started playing Luca at centre half. It just was never going to work out. You just kind of had a feeling there was rumblings about what he thinks they did in training to demean or belittle players. It was never going to work. So I think he'll give Vieira the entire season, and I say that honestly. And if we go down, I mean, and that sounds really stupid, but at this point, are we gonna can we really get an Allardyce to come back, or a Pulis or Hodgson, God forbid, to keep us up? I mean, to me, just stick with the man for a year. Win, lose or draw, and see. As long as you see things that you like out of him, you know what I mean, with academy wise or style of play wise. Again, I don't want to go down, but I also don't want us to just. I don't want us to get rid of him just because he got off to a poor start. And on the other side, if he gets off to a great start, again, I'll be happy that he leaves if we're doing really well, because they happen to Palace all the time, so I'm used to that. So,
As long as it's not to Bolton.
or
Yeah.
no, yeah, good point, exactly. I almost said it's another team, because where did Dowie go? He went up north, Charlton,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
I will say to sort of keep my reputation of being a miserable guy, Nick, you've really helped me out on our show document that we put together beforehand. You've written that he's 14-1 to be the next Premier League manager. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
cheers
Palace
for
way.
that. That's the sort of stat that I want to read, mate.
It's the ninth in the list. So the ninth favourite, if there's such a thing.
Sort of on a little tangent, we had another question from Leif Anderson's forehead on Twitter, who says, how long until Vieira leaves Twitter? Because he's on Twitter, and you'd imagine the amount of abuse he's going to get after a few defeats is going to be pretty hairy, isn't it?
Does any other club have their chairman and manager both on Twitter at the same time? It just is a disaster waiting to happen. He's going to have to get off like September. I just can't see him and Parish both tweeting after losses or wins, and that going well either way. So no, he's got to get off at some point, like now, because that's not.
Yeah, we want to see the tweet say, "I love Palace. I'm really happy to be here." That's
right.
it.
Exactly. That's it.
Stop
Right.
there.
Go dark from there. Exactly.
Parish doesn't tweet after losses, haven't you noticed?
Yeah, I have. I certainly have. Because everybody talks about it, like my son.
So one thing that we sort of glossed over a bit earlier that's quite important, which Nick said, was about the backroom staff. Because I think whether you think he's inexperienced or not, a strong backroom staff is obviously really important wherever you are and however experienced you are as a manager. There's been a couple of names which have come out. One is Christian Wilson, who is a sort of performance analyst type coach who I think worked at all the clubs that Vieira's been at. And one is a Welsh guy named Roberts, who was the technical director of the Football Association of Wales, and I was doing a little bit of reading about him because I had never heard of him, I have to admit. But apparently, he was a big part of why the coaching badges with the Football Association of Wales are so popular. And funnily enough, I think Andros and Martin Kelly were doing some coaching badges in the summer in Wales.
Yep.
But they said sort of he was instrumental in putting the courses together, and Vieira came through there, Arteta, Steve Cooper did as well, and Chris Wilder. And apparently he's been very involved in bringing the sort of younger players through the Welsh system, which again leads nicely into what we hope we'll see from Vieira and the academy. Patrick, what do you think about having a sort of a strong backroom staff?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, don't know much about Roberts at all, but what I like you, Sam, I read up on him, and he sounds like the perfect type of person you want to have in the background behind Vieira. Hopefully hiring younger people, people to help Vieira. I did notice that today Paddy, Sean Derry were at training, obviously being the first day with Vieira. So I'm assuming that they'll may take a more of a role. Again, I'm the kind of person, I think Derry and Paddy doing a great job with the kids. Leave them there, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing one of them, moved up a little bit to help out, just because of their familiarity with the club, with the younger players, etc., as a kind of a conduit. But again, I don't know much about Roberts. If he comes in, great. I think that'd be great. I read a little bit about Christian Wilson also. Seems like a person that Patrick Vieira kind of relies on and has been with him everywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in. And there was a silly rumor going about Brian Kidd left Man City, that he might come in. I mean, Brian Kidd's 70 something years old. By the way, great player. Saw him play many times for Man United way back in the day in Man City, but I don't see him coming to Palace. But I like to see someone younger. But so whoever he brings in, I would trust him. But I'm sure that was negotiated or talked to with Parish, and we'll hear about those names in a couple of days. But I think that if Roberts comes in, I'll be all for that.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's important with Paddy and Derry, and I saw Dean Kiley was there as well.
Kylie was there, yeah, exactly, yeah, Kylie, yeah.
Having those guys there as a sort of way to sort of, they know the squad. They obviously know the first team players, but they obviously know the younger players very, very well from last season, and having them there, sort of familiar faces, because there were quite a few of the 23s and the 18s in these training photos.
Right.
That obviously helps. It makes it an easier sort of transition. They can introduce the players to him. It's not like Vieira's coming in completely cold and doesn't know anyone. So I think that's important. I would imagine that they will go back to their roles as 23s and 18s managers when he brings more backroom staff in. But I'm sure we'll find out more about those in the coming days as he makes more appointments, and we get finally an interview with him once the media team have got themselves sorted. So yeah, I guess we can sort of wrap it up because we've covered most things there. But in terms of how you're feeling going into the season, obviously it's his first day. We haven't made any signings. We haven't re-signed anyone to new contracts. But how are you guys feeling as of now about the season coming up? Nick, we'll head to you first.
I'm a lot more confident this season than I was when Tony Pulis quit the day before the season started. Let's put it that way.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It's a new project. We said before, when we knew that Roy was leaving, that it was going to be a rebuilding job, and that things were going to change significantly at the club. And the fact that we've got such a superstar player who is still referred to in all the press reports I've read. Arsenal legend has taken over Crystal Palace. Well, hopefully by the end of the season he'll be a Crystal Palace legend, and let's just hope it happens.
That's extremely positive, Patrick. What do you reckon?
I'm excited about the appointment. It's a risk, obviously. I mean, but any appointment honestly would have been a risk. But I like where Parish went on this. I think that I believe in karma and destiny, and I think that this was meant to be. That Vieira got this job, and I really hope he does a good job. Real quick, I want to tell a quick personal story about Vieira that I want to share. about 20-something years ago, I met George Weah. George Weah is married to the sister of the president of the club that I coach here in New York. And George used to come over here in the summertime. So I think it must have been 2000. He came over. He was helping us do some training over here. Obviously, George Weah was one of the best players who World Player of the Year. Is now the president of Liberia. So I'm actually honored to be, called him a friend. And we were talking one time, we were doing some training session. He talked to me about Patrick Vieira. Now I bring it up because he played with Vieira 1 year at AC Milan. Vieira had just gotten there. He was young. I think he came from France. I don't remember the club he came from in France.
I think he used to play for Cannes.
It was Cannes, exactly. He only made a few appearances at Milan, but he said to me, he mentioned to me, he said this is 90, this is 2000. He said, when I first met Patrick Vieira, he was a very shy kid. And he was kind of getting bullied a little bit at training. And I told him, you have to stand up for yourself, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, but I told you, this kid, he told him back then, this was in 96, he said, you're going to be a great player. I love the way you train. I like your attitude, and George really also talked about him glowingly. And again, knowing George as I know George, he's not the person to kind of throw out plaudits for no reason. So the fact that he had mentioned way back when that, about Patrick Vieira, and we all know how great a career he ended up having with Arsenal and winning the World Cup with France, etc. But, he just happened to mention about Patrick and how he was as a person and how shy he was back then and how he kind of out of his shell. And I thought about that, I said to myself, you know what, that's the kind of person, that's now, he's the manager of a club that I love. And I kind of feel that, if he can, I really feel that this is a really good thing for Palace. It's a risk. Don't get me wrong, it's a risk, but I really think that that he can do a good job with us. I'm really, really hoping that that we've made the right move here, and I'm excited about it. I really am. I don't often get excited about management decisions because I kind of they're much of a muchness with Pulis and Allardyce and my favorite Alan Pardew, but I really hope that, and I really think this could be a little diamond in the rough type thing that we've got here, and I think he can go on to be one of our. I just hope it works out, and I'm excited about it. I really am.
Well, yeah, fingers crossed that we're having a positive season, and we'll get less angry Patrick on the podcast after.
Never.
I guarantee
Never.
I'll be less angry. I guarantee I will. Trust me.
Well, on that note, I think that's a good way to end and say that you have to tune in to the podcasts and the watch-alongs throughout the season on Back of the Nest to see whether Patrick can keep his side of the bargain or not. So we'll wrap it up there. A lot more positive than I usually am on my preview shows.
It's
but
Terence that drags you down, mate.
it is
Exactly.
Listen, he's
and
off.
Albert.
I think Terence is off shooting a GQ cover at the moment, so I'll have to get back to him. But just want to say a big thanks to both you guys, Nick and Patrick, and a big thanks to producer Sam for sitting and listening to all this, and probably having to sit and listen to it all again as she edits it. But until whenever the next podcast is, I have no idea because I'm not that well organised. To quote Terence, up the Palace.